I think if you're asking right now, I think that the problem becomes the metric, right? So how do you measure? For us, it's a little easier because we can look up performance data. But you have some city employees that they don't have performance data. They come in, they do their job from 8 to 4, and they go home. They don't measure. I'll just use Mark's department for an example. You don't measure how many trash cans this guy dumped compared to the guy next to him. So then I think you get into an issue with the metric. Can something be worked out? Yeah, I think you're going to have to look at maybe 2, 3, 4 years of data before you can come up with that, maybe two to three, a real serious metric to do that base, to do that measuring against.
Well, everyone should have a job description,
Correct.
The other issue,
have an attendance issue.
the other thing that makes it a little bit unique, in other words, looking at something similar, look at the construction industry, for example, compared to my company. I can assure you there's 100 different salaries paid for the same position, say, milestone helping, based on performance. But there's a large advantage there. It's not up to transparency and public. The Decatur County Highway tried to implement this probably 8 to 10 years ago. And they had it where, just like James stated, 4% raise. Some people got 2, some people got 4, some people got 3. Those were compounded each and every year. The animosity and the despise and the hatred within the department was so tremendous after about 3 or 4 years because everybody knew exactly what everybody else was doing. And because you don't have the matrix to go by, like we just discussed, it's more up to personal interpretation. Then you start hearing favoritism, then you hear this, you hear that. The public sector makes it difficult because of the transparency required for employee salary.
Get that.
That's a good point.
And that's what makes it extremely difficult. And like I said, I can assure you, dealing with them over the years, the Decatur County Highway was horrible. You didn't even want to walk in because you had 30 people who would speak to each other for the hour a day.
Suppose
That
if
does
someone-
not help getting tasks done and the cooperation on the roads.
I suppose if someone's not meeting expectations, there should be.
There's still some of that animosity, but it's not near as intense.
But I'm
as
saying
it
there
goes
should
to
be
dollars.
something done on behalf of the department leads, or department heads that, probation and then replacement.
Okay. I guess it's a temporary decision on that.
So what about the next, I was just looking at your list, Josh, department heads, 8%.
Did we agree on the 5% plus for the employees?
I guess that.
Did we agree on that?
So the base rate's 5% plus longevity, or
Unless someone else has another proposal.
If I could speak on behalf of the police department real quick. My budget does represent a 6%, and this is based off of a comment that was made last year that they wanted the police and fire being paid the same. So they gave up some certifications and stuff last year to go towards their base. And in doing so, it actually put us behind.
we didn't put you behind, we just took that and added it to their base. They're different departments, right? So we may, I hear what you're saying, but it doesn't mean we always have to pay the same. The frustrating piece about that is I think that might have been slightly misrepresented last year, how we came to that conclusion. And so I think maybe what it is we look at, I don't know, I'm extremely frustrated with that situation, how it happened last year. So just put it, we took a cert pay, and we took it out of the cert pay, put it on the base pay, because the assumption was the majority of the department had it. It turns out half the department had it, not the majority of the department had it. So so we gave a $2,250 raise to all the firefighters for 3 certs, and only 15 out of the 30 firefighters have those 3 certs as of like, a couple months. So that's frustrating. So so maybe maybe we need to talk about how do we rectify that. And maybe we go back and we just say, hey, we're gonna take that $2,250 off the pay. We'll increase it with the 5%, that'll cover that. I think we can look through that and figure out where that comes. And then we go back to putting it back in the cert pay. And we'll go back to where it was. We tried to do the right thing for the right reason, but it was misrepresented, and I just,
That was to put that on the base pay because the purpose.
the retirement's based on the base pay.
Base.
Right, and so we added it to the base pay, that's the intent and why we did it, so we tried to do it for the right reasons. Because they were, in our assumption, they were already getting it anyway. I think we were told 27 out of the 30 already had those 3 certs.
That was for the EMT, and I
That was for the EMT, rope rescue, and hazmat tech.
I'm aware.
I just wanted to make sure it was represented properly.
And I'm getting ready to apologize for that, because you were upset that I didn't apologize. I wasn't fully understanding where those assumptions were at.
I was upset that it was 9 months later before I was told about it, that's what I was upset about, so.
And
Go ahead, explain.
That's the same time I found out about it, council, and I apologize. We have since held a mandatory rope rescue class where I am proud to report that all of the Greensburg firefighters that had failed it the first time have actually passed it the second time. I believe we have maybe 1 or 2 more firefighters to get through it, but then they will all have the rope rescue technician certification, with 3 of those individuals taking hazmat on their time, and then we're looking at scheduling a hazmat technician class come this spring, or next spring, just because we're running out of time and running out of training money to perform those. So on behalf of the fire department and myself, council, I apologize. I did find out about it at the 9 months until it was clarified to me through an investigation.
So how many have the EMT right now?
EMT, we have 2 of our new hires. Help me out here, Brian, so I don't mislead anybody.
We have 27, we have 30 employees, we have 27 that have the EMT.
27 have it.
Yeah, now, we have 2 new employees coming on, 2 are going off, 2 are coming on. They do not have the cert. One has the EMT, the other one does not, but he's required to have that within 1 year.
Does that include Josh?
2 don't have it. 2 of the new employees don't have it, they have to have it within a year of their service.
And that's by January. I'd have to look at the time, Jamie, and I'm not gonna give you any numbers off the top of my head because I don't wanna mislead you. So I can get you those numbers tomorrow morning, but right now, I don't have them.
So the $1,500 was for the EMT. We did not get a $2,250 raise last year, we got a $2,000 raise.
I thought it was
No, you took
2,500
away
if
the
you had all 3,
You
right?
took away the $250 incentive pay, remember?
It was 2,500 if you got all
No,
3.
it was $2,250. You took away the $250 incentive pay. It became a $2,000 raise. 27 of our employees had the EMT at $1,500. Some 15 employees had the rope rescue at $250 each, and 18 of our employees had hazmat tech at $250 each. So when the chief spoke last year, he misspoke and said 27 of the employees had all of the certs. They did not. 27 had EMT, 15 had rope tech, 18 had hazmat tech. The rope tech and hazmat are only $250 each. The EMT was $1,500 each. So it's not fair to say that we all got all those certs and all that money when it is not fair to say that. Because the $1,500 is the EMT. And that's the most amount for those certs.
Someone lost $250.
And actually, some guys
Some lost
had
$350.
all the certs and had the $250. They lost $250 of their pay. They were getting $2,250.
But they
But
gained
they gained on
They did gain on longevity, but I'm just talking apples for apples here. When you're,
Game on retirement.
yes. I just want that clarification that it was not,
Which was the whole purpose why we did what we did.
the whole purpose was to put that from what we were making onto the base pay. It did cost the city something, yes, because not all employees had it, but it was a minimal amount compared to how it helped with our recruitment and retention to get it onto our base pay to help recruit new firefighters, and that was the whole purpose of the act. And yes, it does help with longevity, it helps with base pay, and it helps with retirement for firefighters retiring as well. All of those things go together.
I guess that, because we got way off track, why I was trying to take it back was, to Chief McNeely, is we did that because we took certs away from the firefighters and gave it on their base. We looked at doing the same thing with the police department, but we all agreed there weren't certs that really matched that.
It's because we did that about 6 or 7 years ago. We invited the fire department at the time to join with us. At the time, the chief that was there didn't want to. So we'd already gone through that and gave up our intoxilizer certification, some other certifications, crash reconstructionist, stuff like that we had given up to do the same thing. And that's where we got ahead of the fire department for a few years on some pay. What I was trying to say there at the end when I started was, in doing so, they have gotten ahead of us now. And so I worked with Julie down in HR, and she worked with Nate and myself to come up with a very similar pay scale. It's a little hard to do because we're 28-day employee or pay rotation, and they're 40 day. Is that right? 40-day pay rotation.
28 days.
28 days.
You're 28 day.
28 day.
However it is, because they work more hours than we do in a week consistently. She can explain it better than I can. But basically what I was trying to do is get us as close as possible. And you can see when you get to our pay rate, it shows an increase in the salary, but if you look at the overall, it's actually only a 2% increase for the entire salary portion of us. But that does bring us up to within, I think it's $15 of the fire department employee versus a police department employee. That's annually. And she couldn't get us any closer.
You said that's 6%?
6% plus one, yeah. It puts our rate at 25.30. I believe the fire department's the same rate, but because of the hours that they work versus the hours that we work, there's pennies in there that you just can't make up. You can't even out.
Back to Darrell's question, are we okay with 5% plus longevity, excluding the police department, 6% plus longevity?
Yes.
Would you say police department 6?
6 plus 1. Doesn't matter if you are or not.
Or is that where we're?
That's where we're at.
settling?
That's where we're settling. Okay, department heads 8%. One, Amy, I think you added a sheet about 2021 salaries in there, in that packet. That was actually nice. I'm trying to find the right sheet so I know what you call it, but basically it was like high to low. That was really nice. And so I think this really displays some of the need of what we're talking about. And I think the piece is, if you look at, sorry, Chief McNeil, I'm going to use you for an example here, okay? So, but if you look at his 2021 pay, and then you look what we budgeted for the police chief in 2022, he took a significant decrease to take on more responsibility for the community. I think that's just highlights the need on, I think, why we need to consider bridging that gap and fixing that.
Okay. We all in agreement on that for now?
This also goes to the point, and I guess a whole separate subject, but I know having different conversations with Brian, you know, a long time ago, we were talking about that, and I think Brian made the comment he wasn't interested in applying for the fire chief role at the time because he's gonna take a pay cut, and looking at this, he would take a pay cut to work more hours and have more responsibility. So I think it goes to, I think we need to look at doing something there, so. Thoughts?
Okay.
That one, talk about that one.
So, what, 8%?
Are you okay
Is
with that?
consensus?
I guess that's what I
Department head?
Yes.
I took silence as a consensus.
Yes.
So if we go to the general
Today's
fund,
here again.
so, this is a piece, I think, we've got to get this rectified, the Washington Township fire contract. At the point it was put in place, it was to fund 3 firefighters, then that, and then we had some issues. I'm not even aware, did we receive payment last year? Do we even have a contract signed for this year? I'm just
The contract we had ended in 2020, did not have one, it only been for 2021. So we don't have one, I have asked, and consulted with them, and there's been very little response.
I mean, I think this is coming to a head, we need to push it because, I mean, we're still
I can
providing
invoice
service.
them.
What was
You
your
wanna
last-
send the invoice?
What was your last payment? Remember what it was?
They paid for 2021.
Yeah.
And it was 100 and,
20.
was it 120
That was,
thousand?
yeah.
It looks like they made both their payments.
They made both their payments in
They didn't
21.
pay the 2021 payment, they'll make 21.
They paid 2020 and 2021 in 23.
Right, because there was a, yeah, so there's an issue with that. But I
And
think we,
that was at a reduced number compared to what it was prior to.
It was 140.
Well, when they, yeah, when they first.
I mean, I guess I'd suggest we reach out, but at some point, I think we should send them an invoice. I mean, we're still providing the service, right? So
I
if
reached
you're a
out less
contractor and you
than a
provide a
month
service,
ago.
you don't just say, well, I mean,
So I will be happy to invoice them.
I feel like we should, and then maybe that brings them to the table for a discussion, but we need to have that conversation, we need to push that to a head.
Because that's one of the reasons I was told 2 years ago, or whatever it was, that we never paid because you never got an invoice. And it was like, oh,
We need to strongly consider, and this is maybe a different conversation, maybe this is something that needs to be done, not in this room, but behind closed doors, but we need to have a conversation and figure out, do we need a different legal counsel for that matter? Because you can't represent both parties in a conflict like this, and we need to.
Our legal
separate.
counsel doesn't represent them anymore.
Okay.
They've secured independent legal counsel
Okay.
who
But maybe that's a move.
doesn't respond. Or I've pushed, we haven't gotten a response. The last thing I think we can do is send an invoice, and I guess we can do that. I'm assuming you want to invoice for last year's contract amount.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's supposed to be 40.
We need to have that conversation with the new township trustee.
The point being, those funds are not represented in your income. It is Greedy Financial's opinion that we shouldn't bet on money that we aren't guaranteed. So it's not, I'm sorry. Sure.
I think that's the right way to do it. I don't think we just wash it off and say it's gone. I think we need to go and figure that out. Sorry. Okay. I was just gonna go down the list, Josh, if that's okay. Did we talk to Chris or find out about the council situation there? The additional council members for 2023?
What was it? 3.
Yeah.
I got a quick question.
Yeah.
Still on
Bottom of page 1, I think. So.
top part of page 1, clerical help part-time. That's it.
Which document are you on?
Maybe clerical part-time.
Oh, he's actually, I was on Josh's, like his notes that he sent for the
Oh,
budget,
right.
so I was just gonna go through, yeah. I got you.
21 was 1,600, and 3,600. Now we're budgeting 18,000.
That's a typo. Look in the green box where it says 3660. That would be good. It's a 0% increase.
Okay. So that was, less. I can't see the box.
Sorry, that's in front of me.
Yeah,
There's something in it.
it's green on here.
Never mind.
That was easy.
We skipped over the communications director.
She's a department head.
Over who?
She leads her communications department. She's a salaried individual and has been.
Well, I mean, even though she's salaried, doesn't mean, does she have people work underneath her?
No.
I would go with 5%.
I would ask that you don't. I'm asking that you don't. She works a lot of hours in partnership with me and us and helps lead our administration. She also runs the front desk and is the face of the city hall, works with all of these departments. I mean, I would say that in a way that all the department heads work with her. But
She also does not get longevity or comp time.
yeah. Ron also doesn't have any direct reports. It's not. I would ask that you continue to treat her just like the other department heads. Is anybody else weigh in on that? Okay.
Really hard to make things up.
I mean, I understand you consider it part of it. It's not like what the others have to do.
She's
I wanted to bring him up in a second, if that's all right. So we did, annual study doesn't have wrong.
No, that's it, but I was trying to be fair. Trying to be
So,
fair.
I mean, do we look at, I mean, are we still doing an 8% on wrong? Well, I think if we look at your data, right, his pay is, we're not trying to make up a lot of ground there, we probably overcompensated at some point in time, based on the data you gave us. And maybe we move that back to 5% or, I don't know.
I might think
Yeah. It's the bottom left.
I would still argue that we're getting good value from salaried employees by not paying overtime or those types of items on those two individuals.
I'm just, I mean, I think part of the rationale of doing 8% was to try to help catch them up to where maybe we lacked, right? And In this case, though, I don't think that position's lacked. I think we're more than in line, and so maybe 8% is not appropriate in that position.
For one.
Yeah, not for all department heads, I was speaking specifically for the engineer. Just based on the pay study here.
Any further discussion on that?
Disagree, I don't know. I think we can look at the things that he does and more than justify the salary.
Well, I think you bring up a good point when we're justifying the 8% by trying to bridge the gap between our salary.
What your thoughts are? What's that? We did 5.
I vocally disagree, but this is your.
I think the justification though for the 8% was that we're trying to bridge a gap. We weren't just trying to say, hey, we're gonna make it even across the board. We have a deficiency that we're trying to bridge, and I think that's the justification here. Right?
And I think are we talking about Kristen, or are we talking about?
I'm talking about the engineers.
Okay, so we're talking about two different things, I think.
Oh, no, that's the 5%. I thought we would,
I
I thought we were saying 8%.
I thought we were talking about those.
oh, you're 5% on both. Okay, sorry, misunderstood.
I don't think, from the communications world, I don't think we're underpaying our communications director assistant. I think we would have 35,000, if not more, front door assistant. I think you get a lot more value out of that. Kristen is the first one there on weekends with me, working alongside me. She's the one that helps all of you, represents the city at different functions, speaks on our behalf, works with Amy, works with all of our visitors. I think we're not underpaying for that service. And I don't think it's unrealistic to maintain her raise with other leaders.
What are your thoughts then? Let's just do one at a time. Let's talk about the communications director role. I guess I'm okay if we do 8 with that with the other department heads. I think, did you say 5, Daryl? You said 5.
Well, if you're 8 with the department head, then if it's the department head thing, then
Well, no,
Ron is 8 too, because he's a department head.
Well, that's why
And no one's answering.
I'm trying to, I just try to flesh it out and have that conversation, so. I was just telling you where I felt like, I think I'm okay if we do 8 there, but I think on the engineer it's 5, and I think it's the rationale where we are trying to bridge that gap, but I guess I'm okay with whatever we decide to do. No matter what we decide to do, I don't think anybody, this isn't a judgment. I mean, if you look at these raises, this isn't a judgment on people's work ethic, their work quality. I mean, I think we're very blessed in our community with the people we have to represent our community. I'm proud to be part of this board and the people that represent our community. So none of this is meant to be, we're looking at dollars and cents, and these are numbers. These aren't a judgment of somebody's character, their attitude, their work ethic, in no means at all, right? This is how do we hit a budget, and so no matter what we decide here, that's no reflection on somebody's character. both or for?
No,
Just Chris, okay.
5.
Maybe they count. I'm just going down the line. Five. Five.
Green, 5.
3 of, so it's 5.
Anything else on page 1? Page 2, the treasurer's office. Any questions for Amy?
I don't have anything there.
Okay, everybody else?
I like this, I just don't have the lines, so sometimes it's hard to see the line here. Okay, go ahead.
Page 3, city council. Two things on here. I have a meeting with Ames attorney in a couple of weeks, I think, about the addition, the expansion of the council. I don't have a good answer on that. So what I've done is I've included 2 salaries for the 2 other seats should they come on in 2023. I am confident that that won't happen, but this way it's in there. It'll have to be in there for the 2024 budget anyway. I don't think it's unrealistic to plan for that. And additionally, I've included a $500 raise for each of you, which would include the 2 new positions.
Will we have an answer on that before the October meeting?
Probably not. I've got to figure, I and the rest of the legal world all are on varying pages, so I'm not sure that we can get that figured out. But if we don't have them, we don't spend them. It goes back. It would be like, you know. Okay, so we'll change that to 56. The next item of interest, insurance, I mentioned that at the beginning, we're expected to see a 6.5% increase. We've added $100,000 to the general line. Of course, the utilities pays for theirs. Honda Fire picks up some of that. So this is what's left for the general fund to pick up, so I've included the $100,000 addition. As always, we vary on that as self-insured and depending on usage of healthcare services. Any questions on that?
Not that. Animal control, you know, that was one, I'm trying to remember, there's another one, was it dispatch added a person?
Yeah, so let's,
I'm just, animal controls on here. That's a pretty significant increase. I guess, how do we communicate with the county? I mean, they're approving a significant increase, assuming we're paying for half, without even coming to talk to us, to assume that we would agree to pay that additional, right? It's just, you're paying it, right? There's a huge assumption there. I mean, and that's very frustrating.
their approved budget, and I won't get all the numbers right, was more than what we approved in 2021. Because there was the whole error that happened in 2020. And so we approved less money in 2021 for 22 because we had part of the payment already made with 2020 money. So the increase isn't as large as it does because what was approved at the county was different than ours. But it is still an increase. They are, Mindy's not here, but they are adding a third. They're going from 2 in part-time to 3 in part-time. I included their copy of their budget that they submitted to me in your packet. There's a lot of discussion about animal control and what that looks like. I know that that's something GPD has been working on, dispatch has been working on them as well. Mindy's been the director out there now for not quite a year.
Yeah.
I think they're making some good inroads and making good progress. The 3 agreements that we have that mirror this, dispatch, IT, and animal control, all are something that actually we've been trying to improve communications between the county and the city on. I guess in a way, because we're a little bit later this year, that conversation didn't make it down the street fast enough. But that's about all I have.
Do you think, go ahead.
For our half, and roughly, basically 300,000, what are we getting for that 150,000?
That would be a better question for Mike.
I'm sorry.
For our half of their budget, what are we getting? If you call out there, some dogs run astray, you get no assistance.
Yeah, so that's kind of what we're dealing with now, unless they're asking us to contain the dog until they, and then they'll come. So we're virtually kind of doing half their job for them. That is an issue we've had in the past. We have seen some gain in that. We've seen some inroads since Mindy has taken over. We're seeing them, they are responding more. If it's a dangerous situation, they're responding pretty quickly. Where we have issues is evening times, nighttime, when we get a call. And part of that is that they're running her as the director, they're running one person as the shelter manager, and then some part-time help. I do believe adding some more manpower would help out with that. I don't know how they manage that. I'm not keen to, if they would have 2 people working daytime plus a director, I would hope they would look at an evening type shift to help fill in those gaps.
I guess that's the right question, because then we'd like to know that information before we just approve a budget, a huge budget increase. I know you're saying it's not as much, but it's still pretty significant.
I have a copy of their minutes from the last meeting that talk about their in-county and city runs. I can forward that to you for review. Anything that
When it's really a $150,000 investment, I guess I'd like to understand what I'm getting for that money. Because personally, my interactions with Nancy and stuff, and other people I talk to, they're frustrated that they call out there and they're told, I'll call the police and they're picking them up.
Yeah, we don't pick up dogs.
No, they don't.
Yeah.
I had a
They don't, so they still have.
issue earlier in the year. And we kept the dog.
Oh, they probably have a tax credit.
It's hard.
So I'll,
See, that's it, you know. What do you do, what direction do you go to see something runs stray, or what do you do, who do you call? What's the expected response when you do call? There's a lot of gray there.
I can tell you, we respond, but if we don't have a way, if there's not a neighbor that's willing to throw it in their backyard till they get there, a lot of times it's just, we watch it for a few minutes and then we have to go on to the next call, so.
I'll try to gather some more info and shift that over.
I guess the other piece though is just, how do we maybe have a communication there with the county? Just some discussion prior to approving on those joint accounts, right? Those are things I think we need to, and maybe we need to have a joint workshop prior to our budget to discuss just those things, maybe just those.
Their budgets haven't been approved. We can always send a memo down there saying this is what we've approved. I don't believe that our interlocal agreement that we have with them would really, I can't imagine that that would supersede the state law saying you are the fiscal agents, you are the financial city. So if you don't want to approve that much, I think you tell them you're not going to pay that much. Not sure that that's maybe the best way to deal with interlocal agreements, but that is something that you have the ability to do. If you authorize the clerk treasurer only to pay $125,000, that's all she can pay. So, we'll leave that with an asterisk of providing some more information. Is that fair? Okay. Anything else on page 3? Move over to Board of Works. The item that's on here, community dispatch, Erica Free is the dispatch director. She's here for any questions or comments that you may have. You also received a copy of her budget packet. Erica, you requested last year to add a person, and that request was denied by both the city and the county.
Right, I think it was actually in the 2020 for 21 budget, and then we did not try last year, and then we put it back in this year.
So this adds one dispatcher and all of the other extracurricular expenses that come with the post.
Right.
There's also 50,000, there's 100,000 paid for public safety on dispatch as well.
Not seeing anything.
Nothing for Erica? Okay. The other item on here is IT services. Josh Tressler is here as well. As I mentioned to you all, the county has approved, or will approve, I guess, the addition of a third IT person. The budget that I presented to you, or this copy, does not include that position. If you choose to fund that, there would be an additional $36,670 that would be needed to fund that. Josh, is that all an accurate representation?
So I will say I did discover something today. I did get a change made. It actually decreases the value, or sorry, decreases the ask for additional, but I'm going to have to get clarification from the county tomorrow. The way we budget insurance at the county is a little bit different. I kind of budgeted twice for the third position, depending on how you look at it. So that would be an additional savings. But there are a couple of other changes and things that I'm not really sure. I don't know how much to go to public meeting because it's maybe internal to how the county does some of their budgeting. But there are a couple things I'm going to need to clarify on. Right now, I'm showing that the half for each department or for each entity would be $206,000 instead of the
216
or 216, right? But I do need to get some clarification. And I guess I just want to comment too to you guys as well, and I agree. The mayor and I sat down and discussed this a few weeks ago. To Jamie's point about trying to work something with the city and the county to have these discussions and things, ahead of time. This is my first full year doing a budget and having to come back and go through the process and not understanding that with the hopscotch meetings between the city and the county, I don't know how we ever come to an agreement before we're both trying to set numbers with two different boards that may have completely different opinions on how we do things. So I definitely want to try to work to some kind of resolution or something so we don't run into this in the future. But to the mayor's point, I'm not really sure how we handle interlocal agreements or, financial board decisions, when they disagree, how we handle that. And obviously, I don't want that to be a point of contention or an issue, so. As it stands right now, the significant budget increase is a request to add a third position. There is a little additional funding in there that I had spoken with the mayor about. We increased one of the line items by $10,000 to consolidate our telecommunications and to save some money and actually add redundancy for all city and county offices. Those line items were not removed from the respective utility budgets on the county and city side. That's really it. So $10,000, but I know that's a small amount here, but that was actually still budgeted by the other departments. So there is some wiggle room to move things around, but that's where I need to check with the county and kind of understand how we go through this process and how we do that appropriately.
What basis or what justification are you using to the third person?
So when we initially had the discussions several years ago when I came over as just public safety, our kind of plan at the time, this was just tabletop commissioners, council members, and I believe the mayor was there. Actually, you were not the first meeting. Our discussion was if we decided to grow the department and take on all city and county, all IT, we would add 2 positions, one from each side, kind of just to even out the funding. When we decided on the 50-50 budget and the split, we looked at last year, with the city hall move, with the some additional projects at the county, we really weren't sure what that was going to look like, if we really needed to add 2. So we discussed, as we formed the department, we all agreed on just adding 1 position for that time being. As it stands right now, I'll tell you, we are able to get tasks done and we are staying up with completing day-to-day things, but we are struggling with long-term projects, things that need to be upgraded and done. That new projects come in and get prioritized on top, and those keep getting pushed down. And I'll look back and say, gosh, that may take 5 hours to do that 6 months ago, which is it's not ever a priority to get there. So we've kind of gone back and looked at, we have gained a lot of efficiencies, which really I think is kind of why we were able to get through this year and really kind of look at, maybe we could do it with just 2 people. But I'll tell you, we're falling behind on things that should not be falling behind. And that kind of pushes me back towards where we initially discussed going a 3-person department. And that was really the biggest question, the county council had as well. I don't have any large stories for savings with the city and cost things, but an example of some of the things that have happened are project upgrades at the county that vendor quoted $62,000 to come in and do the work. And Dave Henderson, our support technician, spent 3 hours on the phone and took care of the project and sent it back to the state and said, here you go, save the county $62,000 in 1 afternoon, 1 project. I told the mayor, I said, I wish I had a great idea where we've done something like that for the city, and not to say that we won't, it just hasn't happened yet.
Any other questions for Josh, or do we have a direction we want to head on that?
We live in an IT world,
They've done good work for us.
and 2 people for both. And I think I understand what he's saying when he says that those things are getting pushed down. What happens when those things get pushed down is then you get in the big pickle and you think, well, if I could have done this, this, and this, then this wouldn't even happen. So I have seen that several times.
So are we in favor of the
I think,
3?
because if plans go, we're going to need more ITs.
It's a yes for me.
So Josh, you will notify me of what you find out about
Yeah, I just don't want to provide I believe I have it figured out, but I just want to clarify with the auditor, and she was unavailable today.
Anything else on page 4? Page 5, police, Mike, we talked about the cops grant.
You know already?
Yep, you are ready. Anything else?
No, if you look over my budget, you'll see there's only a 2% increase in the entire city budget portion there. We did a lot of moving with our rank pays and stuff that pretty much washed out, where we had some sergeant's positions that weren't filled, some lieutenants that needed filled. So that was all just kind of a wash there. Basically, the largest increase you're going to see is some gasoline. It's not that much, though. We've been really lucky. We always had a pretty nice cushion in our gasoline budget, and so that's not great this year because we're going to be end up using all that plus probably a little bit more. But hopefully the prices come down and stay down.